It all started when Clarissa Paton Hayes, the new HOA president, parked her shiny $90,000 Escalade on my family's land. She didn't even blink when I told her she was trespassing. She just waved some fake legal papers around, claiming that my great-grandfather's 200 acres now belonged to her subdivision. I remember standing there, heart pounding in my chest, thinking there's no way she's serious. But there she was, smiling like she'd already won. "You're just another ignorant cowboy," she laughed right in front of the sheriff, who unbelievably sided with her. Now, I've been on this land my entire life. My family's owned it since 1947, and Clarissa, she's a California transplant who drives a fancy white Escalade. And here she is, telling me how my family's property is now somehow hers. The sheriff, a guy who should know better, is nodding along like this is some kind of neighborhood dispute. But it's not. It's my legacy, my family's history, and I'll be damned if I'm letting some rich, entitled woman come in and claim it as her own. So I did what any rancher would do. I waited. And I thought. I spent 20 years as an electrical contractor, wiring grain elevators, shopping centers, and industrial complexes. I know exactly how many volts it takes to fry the electronics in a luxury SUV without breaking any laws. And trust me, Clarissa was about to learn why you don't mess with a man who knows his way around high voltage. But before I could make my move, it only got worse. Clarissa, with her perfect helmet hair and her clipboard, started showing up every day, parking her Escalade 30 feet onto my land, blocking my cattle gate, damaging my fence posts, making my life a living hell. She even had the nerve to claim that my working ranch, the place my family had raised cattle for decades, was affecting property values in her little subdivision. That's when I knew she wasn't just after my land. She was after something bigger, and I wasn't about to let her have it. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started thinking back to my electrical days. You see, when you work with electricity long enough, you get used to the way things can be manipulated. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And with a little bit of time, patience, and a whole lot of voltage, I was going to make Clarissa regret ever stepping foot on my land. It wasn't just about the Escalade anymore. It wasn't just about the property lines. It was about standing up for what was mine, what had been mine for generations, and about making sure people like Clarissa never think they can get away with using the law as a weapon to steal from folks like me. I didn't tell anyone about my plans. I didn't have to. But I started laying the groundwork. I knew Clarissa wasn't just parking there by accident. Every time she parked, it was in the exact same spot, like she was following some sort of blueprint. So I did what I had to do. I started testing the soil conductivity around that spot, and sure enough, it was perfect for what I had in mind. Wet soil conducts electricity far better than dry ground, and this particular patch of my property was damp year-round. I knew this was the spot I needed to target. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Clarissa brought in her lawyer. Thomas Blackwood, the smooth-talking city slicker, showed up with a cease-and-desist order. "You need to acknowledge our parking rights," he said. And they wanted $5,000 in damages for aggressive behavior. Aggressive, I asked a trespasser to move her car. But here's the kicker: while Blackwood was rattling off his threats, someone was already planting survey flags all over my property, like it was theirs to mark. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about parking. It was about forcing me out. They didn't want my land for the HOA. They wanted it for themselves. They were trying to wear me down with legal threats, harassment, and lies, hoping I'd crack. But I didn't crack. I waited. And I plotted. Weeks went by and Clarissa kept pushing. One day they even spread rumors in the town that I was some unstable rancher who was threatening suburban families. The nerve of them. They'd managed to paint me as the villain in their little HOA drama, and I could see the way people in town were starting to look at me differently. But I knew I wasn't the one in the wrong, and I wasn't going to let them push me around. So I started building something. It wasn't just a fence, it was a statement. I pulled out my old electrical gear and I got to work. My plan was simple: build the most professionally installed, legally sound, and electrically shocking fence you could imagine. I made sure everything was done by the book. I knew the laws, I knew the technical specifications, and most importantly, I knew how to use high voltage to make my point clear. It wasn't long before Clarissa and her crew showed up again. This time they thought they had me cornered. They'd brought in more vehicles, more lawyers, and more pressure. But they had no idea what I'd been up to. They tried to push past my property lines, trying to claim that their parking rights extended even further. But what they didn't know was that I had been quietly preparing for the day they'd make their move. I had the fence set up, I had everything wired, ready to go. The next time Clarissa parked her Escalade on my land, I was ready to make sure she'd never forget it. That's when it happened. The morning of the showdown, Clarissa showed up with her usual entourage of expensive cars, completely oblivious to what was waiting for her. As she backed up against my fence, I flipped the switch. The sound of the 10,000 volts discharging was like thunder. And Clarissa, she got the shock of her life. I'll never forget the look on her face when the electricity hit her SUV. The electromagnetic pulse from the discharge fried every computer in her car, turning it into a hunk of expensive scrap metal. And the best part, she didn't even realize she'd walked right into my trap. Her lawyer and the sheriff were still trying to figure out what happened when I walked up cool as a cucumber and explained it to them. But here's where it gets good. Clarissa, the HOA queen, found out the hard way that Texas property laws don't bend for anybody, especially not for someone trying to bully a rancher into submission. The law was on my side, and I had proof. Clarissa's car was a total loss. Her lawyers had nothing to fight with, and her insurance company wouldn't cover the damages because she'd been trespassing. The story ended with a bang. Not only was I vindicated, but the entire shady land grab operation was exposed. Turns out Clarissa and her developers had been pulling the same scam all over the place, trying to force landowners into selling. And the best part, I didn't just win the battle, I won the war. Burton Corp's entire plan fell apart when the feds got involved, and Clarissa, well, she disappeared, probably back to California where she could try to steal someone else's land. The final chapter, a settlement that paid my family over $800,000 for the stress and the damage. That money didn't just fix things for us, it helped establish a scholarship fund for local kids pursuing agricultural studies. But the most important thing, it wasn't the money, the media attention, or even the legal victory. It was knowing that I stood my ground, that I fought for what was mine, and in the end, it wasn't just about defending my land, it was about defending the right to do things the right way. So here's my question for you. How far would you go to protect what's yours? Would you fight to the bitter end, or would you let someone walk all over you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And by the way, if you've ever had to deal with an HOA, you're not alone. Share your experiences. You'd be surprised how many of us are out here fighting the same fight.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video. Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.